This one might be from the Shake Your Head file. You're not going to believe what a person wrote, or maybe you will because it was written anonymously about an autistic child. There's a family in Canada. It says a neighbor sent a hate letter to them in the mail about their 13-year-old son named Maxwell. Maxwell plays ball in his grandmother's backyard, and the neighbor got so upset about the noise that she wrote this extraordinarily cruel letter, and it really defies logic. I just want to read part of the letter for you because it goes on and on. It says, I hate people like you who believe just because you have a special needs kid, you're entitled to special treatment. God, do everyone in our community a huge favor and move. Vamoose. She spells it vamos, but we're pretty sure we get the drift. Scram. Move away and get out of this type of neighborhood setting. Go live in a trailer in the woods or something with your wild animal kid. Nobody wants you living here, and they don't have the guts to tell you. Do the right thing and move, or euthanize him. Either way, we are all better off. Sincerely, one pissed off mother. While you germinate with that for a little bit, I want to bring in CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Jeffrey Toobin, as well as attorney and former criminal prosecutor Faith Jenkins, and CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Mark NeJame. Where to begin? You know, let me start with you because the Canadian authorities are taking this very seriously, Jeff. They say they're looking into the possibility that this might actually constitute criminal behavior and a threat of some kind. I know you've looked into some of the Canadian law. What have you found?
Right. Well, you know, Canada doesn't have the First Amendment, obviously, and in the United States, I don't think this would be grounds for any sort of case. You know, the First Amendment allows you to say some pretty hateful things, and I think it would cover this letter. In Canada, it's slightly different. It is not as protective. So if you could identify the sender, which has not happened so far, there could be potentially some sort of harassment harassment case filed against the author. Okay, so nothing that rises to the level of, say, a criminal threat. No, I don't think. I mean, there is no threat there. It's just denunciation in the most hateful, horrible way.
So you're a former prosecutor. What do you think?
Well, the wording when it said move or euthanize him, I think if you look at that wording, you probably could look at that as perhaps being more than just an idle threat. When you look at the overall tone of the letter and the speech used in the letter and the level of anger expressed in the letter, I think that that's what investigators would possibly look at.
So what about just the notion, Mark, that this is an anonymous letter that came to, and let me just explain that this is a grandmother's home. The mother of Maxwell and the father of Maxwell work, and so oftentimes Maxwell plays in the grandmother's backyard a couple days a week. And so it was the grandmother who was the recipient of this horrifying missive. What about the forensics in actually finding the sender? It ain't that tough, is it?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you go and try to get fingerprints, all that's been contaminated. You're not going to be able to get anything.
Why? Why do you say it's been contaminated?
Because it was handled. As soon as everybody got the letter, they're looking at it and passing it around. That's why you have to immediately preserve a crime scene. And then you even get into the issue about going knocking on neighbors' doors. How else are you going to do it? It's not going to happen.
It's got to be someone within earshot, right? This whiner says that she can't stand the sound.
Of course, presumably, but you have to understand, is there even a crime to allow? This is a hateful, gutless, horrendous, offensive letter by every definition of civilized people. But with that said, is it against the law? Canada does not have the protection, as Jeffrey said, that we have in this country. This would not even be a consideration in this country. In Canada, threats standing alone can constitute a crime. Threats standing alone in the United States, but for some very, very narrow circumstances, are not going to be a crime, and in the most narrow circumstances, which we're not going to get into today. So
I'm suggesting that this woman euthanize her child and then, in the sender's words, send his non-retarded body parts to science. To me, I just can't imagine there isn't some recourse. And when you mentioned harassment, maybe some kind of civil suit, anything?
How about a restraining order?
Restraining order? Heck yeah. If they find the person.
I think you used some of your Canadian detective skills. You pointed out in the letter that there are several spellings that are American spellings, no U in labor, that rather than Canadian spellings, which would seem to narrow the suspects, especially if you just went through the neighborhood.
Can I tell you, though, Jeffrey? Yeah, but this person who wrote this letter is such an idiot. Everything is misspelled. I've got to be totally honest. I can't even trust that would work. He's a total moron
the
who
best
wrote
thing
it.
the authorities could do is simply identify the person and subject them to public criticism, humiliation. That might be the best resolution.